Just confirm over the chat if you can hear me and if you can see my screen. Cool. Okay. So let's do a recap what we have done in the last session. So in last session, we discussed about object. We discussed about object and we discussed about what are the properties of an object and what are the behaviors of an object and how do we represent these objects, right? How do we represent the objects? Also, we have started the fundamentals of Java programming language. We have started the fundamentals of Java programming language. So we have discussed only two fundamentals. We have discussed only two fundamentals of the programming language. One is the character set. One is the character set, and another is the keywords. Another is the keywords or reserved words. Keywords or reserved words. So we have discussed about the keywords or reserved words. So what are the other fundamentals that we have? What are the other fundamentals that we have? Let me check. What are the other fundamentals that we have in Java? So here are the list of fundamentals that we need to learn in Java programming language. So what is that is character sets. Second is keywords, which we have already discussed. Third is identifiers. Identifiers. Fourth is data types. Fourth is data types. And fifth is variables. We should know variables. Then constants. Constants. Then literals. Okay. Then eighth is operators. Then control statements. Control statements. Finally, data structures, arrays. Okay, data structures, which we call it as arrays. Okay, character set, keywords, which we have already discussed in yesterday's class, which we already discussed in the yesterday's class. So we'll discuss about the remaining, fundamentals in today's class. We'll discuss about the remaining fundamentals in today's class. Okay, so we'll start with the identifiers and we'll also see if we have some time, we'll see if data types also can be discussed or not. Okay, we'll pick identifiers and data types for today's class. Okay. So let us see what is an identifier. Identifier, right? So you know that keywords are reserved words. Keywords are reserved. So your compiler knows the meaning of these words, right? So then identifiers are simple to say user defined. User defined. User defined words. User here indicates programmer. Is a programmer. Okay. User here indicates he is a programmer. So programmer defined words. Apart from this 51 keywords, if you are defining anything in the program, so they are called as identifiers. So apart from this 51, anything you use, any words that you use in the programming, those will be treated as identifiers. So what are the words that we will use? What are the words that we will use as identifiers? So these are basically the names. These are basically the names. Okay, so identifiers are basically the names. What are that is, okay, it can be a class name, it can be a class name, or it can be a variable name, it can be a variable name, or it can be a method name, it can be a method name, right? So basically, if I wanted to identify an object in my program, an object in a program. So when I say Anil, class Anil, when I say class Anil. So now it knows that this Anil is a identifier. Anil is a identifier because there is no meaning. Your compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of Anil. What is the meaning of Anil? Now compiler will treat this Anil as an identifier. Say, okay, compiler will treat this Anil as an identifier. So which it thinks like, okay, class. He is defining a class name called Anil. He is defining a class name called Anil. That is how your compiler will understand. Okay, when I say age, when I say age, when I say mobile, okay, phone number, when I say phone number, right? So this is not, age is not a reserved word. Age is not a reserved word. There is your compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of age. What is the meaning of phone number? What is the meaning of phone number? Right? So these words are treated as user defined words. Okay. So basically now Anil is the class name, age is a variable name. Similarly, the function name or method name, withdraw, deposit, deposit, or add, or sum, whatever the words that you are writing for your convenience, for your identification purpose. When I say withdraw, a method name, deposit, a method name, add is a method name, sum is a method name. Similarly, you can write anything, run, walk, right? All these are the names of your method, names of your method, names of your method. So identifiers are user defined words, which is unknown to your compiler, which is unknown to your compiler. So how do you use an identifier? To identify the classes, to identify the variables, to identify the method names in the program, to identify the method names in the program. Okay. So identifiers are also called as user defined words. Identifiers are also called as user defined words. So when you are defining identifiers in a program, in Java program, there are set of rules. There are a set of rules that are defined in the compiler. There are a set of rules that are defined inside your compiler, which we should be learning about that. Okay. So what are those rules? What are those rules? If you look at the rules, okay. So your your identifiers, your identifiers, okay, can contain, your identifiers can contain alphabets. It can contain alphabets, and it can contain digits. It can contain digits, okay, or it can contain alphabets or digits, which means you can frame your variable, your identifiers with the help of alphabets and digits, and only only two special characters are allowed to use. Only two special characters are allowed to use in an identifier. This is the rule. So you can use alphabets like small a to small z, capital A to capital Z, and the digits also from 0 to 9. And only two special characters are allowed, which means what are those two special characters is underscore and the dollar symbol. Okay, underscore, this is underscore symbol, underscore or dollar. Okay, only these two characters are special characters are allowed when you are defining a, or when you are defining a identifier inside a program. And there is one thumb rule which is mandatory to be followed. What is that? The first character, the first character of your identifier, of your identifier must start with must start with alphabet. Must start with alphabet. So when I'm defining a class name, so my class name has to start with alphabet. It should not start with numbers. It should not start with numbers. No numbers are allowed in the very beginning. Okay. Or you can have a underscore or dollar also as a first character. You can have a underscore or dollar also as a first character, but numbers are not allowed. Numbers are not allowed. Okay. Now, third, you know that keywords can't be used as keywords can't be used as identifiers. These are the three rules. These are the three rules. That's it. Simple rules. So identifiers are like user defined words. Okay. Using these user defined words, you will be defining, or you will be mentioning the class names or method names or variable names inside a program, and the rules that are defined inside your compiler for identifiers are okay. So it should use alphabets or digits, and only two special characters are allowed. Only two special characters are allowed. Okay, what are those two special characters? Underscore and dollar. Okay, and the thumb rule is either your identifier has to start with either with the alphabet or underscore or dollar. It should not start with a number. It should not start with a number. You cannot use the 51 keywords as identifiers because your compiler knows the meaning of those 51. Your compiler knows the meaning of that 51 keywords. Okay. These are the rules. So some of the examples for an identifier, is hello. Hello is a valid identifier because your compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of hello because it is not part of your 51 keywords. Hello is not part of your 51 keywords, and it is starting with an alphabet. Valid. Okay. Now hello 1. Hello 1. This is also valid because it is your it is not part of your 51 keywords, and it is starting with the alphabet. And ending you can have a digit. There is no problem on it. So you are using a digit and an alphabet to create an identifier. This is also valid. Okay. Underscore hello. This is also valid because it is starting with underscore. It can start with underscore. Okay. Dollar hello. So this is also valid. Now one hello. When I say one hello, okay, now it is starting with a number. So it's not a valid identifier. You cannot use this as a class name. You can't use this as a class name or a variable name or a method name. Your compiler will raise a compile time error. Because you're not following the rules. Of that identifier, rules of that compiler, right? So now, why only underscore and dollar are allowed? What happens if I use a special character? Something like, okay, HEL star L0. Okay, what happens if I use something like this? This is also not a valid because no special characters are allowed except dollar and underscore. The reason why dollar and underscore is allowed and why not the other special character is not allowed is okay. So Java is defined in Unicode programming language. So for each character, for each character that that is defined in the Java, okay, that is defined in Java, it knows the meaning of it. Where, for example, when I say plus, it know it is an addition. Okay. When I say minus, it's a subtraction. When I give a asterisk symbol, okay, it's a multiplication. It's a multiplication. Sorry. Sorry, there is a background noise from my side. Just bear with me. So, so every special character that we have, okay, plus, minus, star, ampersand, by, okay, parenthesis, it knows the meaning of all these special characters. So when you use that, so Java thinks that you're trying to do some operation with that special characters. Okay. In Java, okay, there is no meaning defined for this underscore and dollar. There is no meaning defined for this underscore and dollar. For some reason, they left out these two variables or two special characters in Unicode. So it doesn't know what is the meaning of underscore and what is the meaning of dollar symbol. In Unicode programming, in Unicode standard, okay, dollar and underscore are left out. These two special characters are left out, and that's the reason. That's the reason these are unknown to your compiler. These are unknown to your compiler. These are unknown to your compiler. Since these special characters, there is no meaning defined. There is no meaning defined inside your compiler. So it don't know what is the meaning of it. So that these two are allowed. So like 51 keywords, which it has already loaded, which it knows the meaning of this 51 keywords. So they will not be allowed as identifier. Similarly, all special characters are loaded inside your compiler. So it knows the meaning of each and every character, each and every character. But these two characters are left out. These two characters are left out. So your compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of underscore. Your compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of dollar symbol. So only these two special characters are allowed. Only these two special characters are allowed. So now there are some examples I can say. Let me go to previous page. So these are the thumb rules. Identifiers can contain alphabets or digits or only two special characters. First character must be an identifier. It must start with an identifier, or it must start with an alphabet or underscore or dollar symbol. Okay, and you can't use keywords. You can't use keywords. And there is one more rule. There is one more rule. Okay, no space, no white spaces are allowed. No space character is allowed. No white space character is allowed in the identifier. In the identifier. So some of the examples of valid identifiers. Okay, we'll see what are the some of the examples of valid identifiers. For example, okay, my class. Okay, it's valid. It's valid because it is starting with the alphabet and there is no space and there is no space. This is valid. Okay, one way. For example, one way. It is starting with a number, so it is invalid. It is invalid. Should not start with 1. Okay, dollar amount. Dollar amount. When I say dollar amount, it is starting with dollar. Okay, it can start with dollar. So it can start with dollar. Only this character will be allowed. So this is valid. Okay, then final. When I use final, this is invalid. This is invalid because final is a keyword. Final is a keyword. Okay, sales tax, sales underscore tax. Yes, this is valid. This is valid. So underscore tax, this is also valid. This is also valid because it is starting with underscore, not minus, it is underscore. Okay, something like student space info. Okay, student space info. This is invalid because white space is not allowed. This white space is not allowed. Okay, white space is not allowed. Similarly, box 100 words, something like this. Okay, box 100 words. This is also, this is valid. This is valid because it is starting with the, it is starting with a character. It is starting with an alphabet and it has the numbers. It can have numbers in any position. It can have numbers, but the only the starting is matter. Only the starting is always matters. So numbers, number ofs, number ofs, something like this. This is also invalid. This is also invalid because there is a special character which your compiler knows. You cannot use this. Now, can someone tell me, based on this, can someone tell me, okay, can someone tell me whether these are valid identifiers or not? Int, is it valid or invalid? Valid or invalid? Can someone tell me, is it valid or invalid? Over the chat, invalid. It is invalid, correct. This is invalid because it's an, it's a keyword. It's a keyword. Now, total grades. Total grades. Can you tell me it's a valid or invalid? Valid or invalid? Valid. Exactly. This is valid because this is user defined word. This is user defined word. This is valid. Fine. Dollar 200. Is it valid or invalid? Dollar 200. Is it valid or invalid? It's valid. It's valid because it is starting with dollar. It is starting with dollar. So this is valid. This is valid. Okay. ABC 1234 dollar. 1234 dollar. So the dollar. Is it valid or invalid? Invalid. This is valid because this is valid. ABC 1234. It is starting with, there is no rule like it has to start with caps. Nothing like that. It can, you can use small A to Z, capital A to Z. Anything. Anything you can use. Okay. The only thing is it has to start with some alphabet. Some alphabet. Some alphabet. Now, int value. Int value. Is it valid or invalid? Int value. Is it valid or invalid? There is no space. Int v caps value. Is it valid or invalid? I didn't say it's a variable name. I'm just asking, is it a valid identifier or not? I can use it as a class name also. It's not a variable name. Anything. I can use it as a method name also. Right? I'm just asking, is this identifier is valid or invalid? It's not valid. It is valid because only your compiler knows the meaning of integer. The meaning of integer. Now, int value, there is no meaning defined. There is no keyword defined as int value. No keyword defined as int value. These are your interview questions. When you go for any interviews, this is how people ask. Is it a valid or invalid? Okay. So in your compiler knows what is the meaning of int. Okay. This is int is a keyword. Int is a keyword. Int value, there is no keyword called, there is no word which is saying like, okay, this is a reserved word. Okay. It's a combination of two words now, int value. Okay. There is no keyword defined as int value. Okay. If you have seen, I have given a guide, like what are the 51 keywords. I have shared a guide. If you go and read there, you have only the int. There is no word called int value as a reserved word, as a reserved word. So int value is valid because your compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of int value. Okay, it knows only the meaning of int. It knows only the meaning of int. Okay, looks simple, right? Looks simple, but this is how people will confuse. People will confuse. Okay, so now underscore 123, is it valid or invalid? Underscore 123, underscore 123, is it valid or invalid? It's valid because starting with underscore, starting with underscore. Okay. So this is about the identifiers. Identifiers are user defined words. Identifiers are user defined word, except that 51 keywords, whatever the keys, that whatever the words that you are using in your program, whatever the words that you are using in your program, all are identifiers. All are identifiers. Do remember that it can be a variable name, or it can be a method name, or it can be a class name, or it can be anything. It can be anything which is, except this 51, anything that you define, they are treated as identifiers. And the rules are this. And the rules are this. Only four rules. Only four rules. Alphabets. Alphabets. Either you can use caps A to caps A to caps Z, small a to small z, 0 to 9 numbers, underscore and dollar, underscore and dollar. Only these are allowed. And the rules are, first character must start with an alphabet, or or it should start with underscore or dollar. Numbers not allowed. As a first character only, it is not allowed. But in between, you can have it anywhere. In between, you can have it anywhere. Keywords cannot be used as identifiers. Keywords cannot be used as identifiers, and no space character is allowed between an identifier. When you have two different words, there should not be any space in between them. There should not be any space in between them. Only these four rules for the identifiers. Okay, I guess I'm clear with the rules of the identifiers. Any questions on this identifiers topic? So let us quickly do a program. Let us quickly do a program and see and see or validate whatever the results that we have discussed now. I'll take the same class. I'll open that with the namespace, a notepad. So I have a demo class. I have a demo class. Inside this, inside this demo is a valid identifier. So I am making the class name as underscore 123. I'm making the class name as underscore 123. Let us see if my compiler allows me to compile the code or not. So compilation Java C, the file name is demo.java. Compiled. So compiled. Now there should be, if it is compiled properly, there should be a class generated in my working directory. So with the name called underscore 123 dot class, underscore 123 dot class. So the class has been generated, and I can use this underscore 123 to print something. Right now nothing is being printed on this code. Let us go and change some information on this. System dot out dot println this is identifier test. I'm trying to recompile the code and now trying to execute it. This is identifier test. It's valid. Now I'm going and modifying that class name to 123. Class 123. So now the class name I'm starting with a number. Class name I'm starting with number. As per the rule, it should not start with the number. It should not start with the number. Gone case. Now your compiler has to give a error. See, identifier expected. It says an identifier expected was you're giving 1. Okay, it is starting with the number. It is starting with the number. I need a valid identifier is expected here. It says a valid identifier is expected here. Fine. I'll change this to dollar now. I'll change this to dollar. I'll change this to dollar. $123. Compiled because underscore and dollar are allowed. Underscore and dollar are allowed. Running it. Executed successfully. Again, this time I'm giving star. I'm giving star. Dollar. It is starting with dollar, but I'm giving star. Star is a special character. So your compiler knows what is the meaning of star. Now what it should say is it is not a valid identifier. See, it is saying exactly over here the class. Okay, there is a error. Okay, so here this time it is saying it is not saying like identifier expected. There is some error it says. Where exactly at here at opening brace, exactly on this position, because it knows the meaning of the star. So special characters are not allowed. Or let me do one thing. I'll take off all this 1, 2, 3 and all. Okay, I'll give my class. My class happily I can give, because your Java compiler doesn't know what is the meaning of my class. It is not part of your 51 keywords. Now I'm going to compile it. It is valid and it is agreed to. It is valid, and now if you look at your working class or your working directory, you can see my .class. My class .class. Okay. So now instead of that, I'll give a space here. My space class. Now white spaces are not allowed. It should tell. It should give a compilation error. Okay. See this. Exactly, it started over here. Reached end of line while parsing. It is saying that there is some problem with this code. There is some problem with this code exactly at this location. Exactly at this location. Okay. So you can have underscore here. You can have underscore. Yes, this is a valid identifier. Compiled. Executed. Compiled and executed. Okay. And this can be caps also. There is no mandate. It's not mandatory that always any case you can have my class complete caps also you can have. But now the class name will be my underscore class. The class name will be my underscore class. You cannot have this. You don't want to use this. Similar to this also you can use. You can have my class, something like this. You can have my class, something like this with a different casing and all. It won't care whether it is caps or small or whatever this case that you're giving there. Sorry. Compilation demo.java compiled. Now you see, just refresh this. Now you'll see all the new one. My class, right? My class, test class, underscore, all this. Right? So so you can give whatever the name or whatever the characters that you wanted to have. Whatever the characters that you wanted to have in the identifier. So only thing you have to choose, you have to follow that rules of the identifier. Rules of the 4 rules of the identifier. Okay. If you're clear with identifiers, then we'll go with data types. Then we'll go with data types. The next concept that we have is data types. The next concept that we have is data types. The name itself is saying that, okay, the name itself is saying that the type of data, right? Type of data, right? So why we need data types is to represent the type of data that we are storing inside, that we are storing inside a variable, inside a variable. Okay, what is a variable? We'll discuss that. But what first we have to discuss about the data types. So using data types will represent or will identify the type of data that we are storing or capturing from the applications. The type of data that we are storing or capturing from the applications. Okay, so data types basically we use or we need to identify the type of data you want to you want to use you want to use and based on the type of data, based on this data type, based on the data type, okay, based on the data type, okay, what happens is the memory allocation will happen. Memory allocation, the memory allocation is done by your CPU. Okay, so simple to say, data type is simple to say the type of data that you are capturing from an application or you're storing inside your application, the storing inside your application. So it doesn't mean that, okay, it's a user data or a student data, not like that, not like that. Exactly what here it means, what it means by the type of data is, for example, when I have when I have a class called Anil, and when I say age, when I say age, so this is a variable. Age is a variable. What type of data I can store inside this age variable? Is it a number type? Is it a number type data, numeric type data, or it's a character data, or is it a Boolean data? Is it a Boolean data? So like, what is the type of data that you're capturing inside age? Okay, what is the type of what is the type of data that you are capturing inside age? For example, age means these are numbers. I'm capturing numbers. For example, 20. Example 20, right? Or when I say age equal to 20, you are storing the character data, right? You're storing the alphabets, a sequence of alphabets inside it, a sequence of alphabets inside it, right? So when I say salary, when I say salary, when I say salary, so salary will have some or balance, salary or balance, anything you take. Salary will have some paisa, which means dot 50 or 25,000, for example, 25,000 dot 18 paisa, something like this. 25,000 dot 18 paisa. So this is decimal value. This is decimal, right? Decimal or float. So similarly, is it true? A question. Is it valid? Is it valid? Yes or no? Yes or no? When you are having, when any variable is starting with is it, then it is like a boolean. Okay, you will have a yes or no option. Yes or no option. So which means boolean data. Boolean data, right? So the data type, the data types will help you to identify the data, the type of data that you are storing inside a variable, that you are storing inside a variable. Okay, and based on the data type, your system or your CPU will allocate the memory for that data type, memory for that variable, memory for the variable. For example, when I say int age, int age, so when I say int, now your CPU or your program, your Java compiler knows that how much memory I have to block for this variable, how much memory I have to block for this variable. Okay, so we should know what are the type of, what are the, how many types of data types are available in Java. How many types of data types are available in Java before we go on learn about int xyz. Okay, I assume that you now you know that what is a data type, what is the data type, and based on the data type, the memory allocation will be done by your computer, done by your computer. So now, how many types of data types that we have? How many types of data types, or how many types of data types that we have? In which me in that when you ask me, there are two type of data types available in, there are two type of data types available in Java. What are those is, one is primitive, one it is primitive data type, one it is primitive data type, and another is reference, reference or user defined, user defined data type, user defined data types. So basically there are two categories in the data types. So data types require, data types are required to identify the type of data that you are storing inside a variable, storing inside a variable. And there are two categories inside in data types. One is the primitive data type and another is reference or user defined data types. User defined data types. So when it comes to the primitive, when it comes to primitive, which means again these are keywords or reserved words. Keywords or reserved words. Keywords or reserved words, which is known to your compiler, which is known to your compiler. So already your compiler knows what is the meaning of okay these data type. When I say okay, which means your compiler already knows the meaning of these words. Compiler knows already the meaning of these words. And there are, yesterday we discussed, there are 8 data types. There are 8 data types. There are 8 data types, which we call it as primitive data types, which is predefined inside your compiler, So when it is predefined inside your compiler also knows that for each data type, what is the amount of memory it has to block inside the memory. What is the amount of memory it has, what is the amount of memory it has to block inside the memory. Okay, what are these 8 data types that we have is okay, so based on uh, there are some categories in these data types. There are some categories in this 8 primitive data types. So they are like Boolean type. They are like, the categories are like Boolean type and numeric type. Numeric type. So Boolean means only Boolean is allowed. Boolean value is allowed. Boolean value is like true or false. True or false. So 8 primitive types are divided into Boolean type and numeric type. Numeric type. So in numeric type, again these are divided into 2 categories. What are those is integer type and float type. Float type. Float type or decimal type. Decimal type values. Okay. So when it comes to integer type, you have byte, short, int, long, and char. These are integer type. All these are integer type. When it comes to the decimal or float type, you have float and double. Float and double. So the 8 primitive data types are divided into Boolean type and numeric type. When it comes to Boolean, okay, only true or false is allowed in the Boolean data type. Only one data type we have, that is Boolean. One data type that we have is Boolean. When it comes to numeric type, you have integer type and you have float type or decimal type. So when it comes to integer type, byte, short, int, long, and char will fall under integer types. They will fall under integer types. Integer, okay. These are like, if you know mathematics, these are like integer values. These are the integer values. Like whole numbers. These are like whole numbers. You can represent your whole numbers here. You can represent whole numbers. When it comes to float, you can represent the whole numbers. You can also represent whole numbers with decimal values. Decimal values. Okay. You can represent the whole numbers with decimal values. As simple as it. Okay. So you know that there are 8 primitive types, which already your compiler knows, and these are reserved words. These 8 primitive data types are reserved words. So these 8 primitive data types are now divided or categorized into Boolean type and numeric type. Boolean type and numeric type. So in Boolean type, only the true or false will be stored inside that Boolean data type. Boolean data type. Now, when it comes to numeric, it is divided into integer and float. Integer and float. So, when it comes to integer, byte, short, int, long, and char, all these data types will fall under integer type. So, which will store the whole numbers, which will store the whole numbers. When it comes to the floating or decimal, when it comes to the float or decimal, okay, you will have float and double, which will store whole numbers with decimal values. Whole numbers with decimal values. Okay. So now, so now you know that there are 8 primitive types. Then what is user defined? What is user defined? Right? So user defined are simple to say. Okay. Apart from these 8 data types, apart from this 8 data type, anything that is available, anything that is available, anything that is left out. Okay. For our sake, for our sake. Okay. For developer sake, developer can define some variables. For developer sake, developer can define some variables which are called as user defined data types. So developer can define. So developer can define his own variables, for his convenience, So these are unknown to your compiler. Okay. So basically there are 4 types of user defined variables. User defined variables. What are those is the class type, interface type, enum type. This is from Java 5 onwards. We have this enum type, and another is annotation type. This is also from Java 5. Okay, these are the 4 user defined data types. For user defined data types, I'll give you one example. Now think that car is an object. So which means I can write class car, and class can have some properties. Just a minute, guys. There is some background voice from my side. I'll mute for a minute. Sorry for that. There is some background from my side today, so bear with me. Yeah. So you have a class called car. You have an object called car, and car has some variables. Car has some properties. Now I'll say class Anil. So Anil is an object. Now I want to say that Anil have a car. I want to represent this car class inside Anil class. This is possible, right? So this is possible. When I say Anil has a car, how do I represent that? Okay, there is no primitive data type that is defined in Java. There is no primitive data type that is defined in Java to represent the car object. Inside my object, right? So this can be defined with the help of class type. This is one example. Okay. So if you want to represent another classes, as part of your class as a variable, so this can be a class type or a variable type. I hope you understood this example. Now car is another object, Anil is another object. I wanted to tell that Anil have a car. Or you have another class called bike. another class called bike. Now I want to represent this bike class inside Anil. Inside Anil. So there is no data type or no primitive data type that is defined or a predefined data type that is not available for bike. So how do I define that inside my Anil class? I want to have this bike inside Anil. So you can define a bike. You can define a bike, maybe a pen, paper, anything which is unknown to your compiler, which is unknown to your compiler. So this will say that Anil have a car, Anil have a bike, Anil have a pen, Anil have a paper, Anil have a paper. So when I say class pet, I want to represent this pet inside Anil. I can define a pet. So now I can say Anil have a pet. Anil have a pet. Hope you guys understood this. Or any questions on this? User defined data types. Apart from apart from eight primitive, apart from eight primitive, if you want to represent your own variables for your convenience, those are called user defined, user defined, user defined data types. User defined data types. Okay, so there are four different type of there are four type of user defined variables. One is class type, interface type, enum type, and annotation type. Annotation type. These two are introduced in Java 5 versions. From Java 5 onwards, we have this. Before that, we don't have this. Okay. Right now, we are using Java 11. So these enum type and annotation type are also considered as user user defined data types. Okay. So any questions on this? Any questions? What are primitive data types and what are user defined data types, or what is identifier? Any questions? Any questions? These variables are called as identifiers. Yes, the names of variables are called as identifiers. Identifier can be anything. It can be a variable, or it can be a method, or it can be class name, anything. When you are writing a program or when you join an organization, okay, you should understand, right? What is a variable, right? What is the name of a variable? The variable name. Simply say, for example, if you are writing int age, age is a identifier. Age is an identifier, saying that age is an identifier to identify the age. Okay. When I say string name, what is the string? You will understand later. Okay. This is an identifier for you to identify it as a name. Similarly, method name, withdraw, deposit. Okay. Sleep. These are the names of the methods. This method will identify that you're depositing some amount. This method will identify, okay, will say you that okay, he is sleeping. Identifiers are just like names. For example, when I say Anil, that's my identity. When I say Chandra, that's your identity. Names are identifiers, that's it. It can be a variable name, method name, or anything, or class name. They are like user defined. They are user defined for your convenience. Anything else? Any other questions? Sorry, there is some background from my voice. There is some background from my side today. Actually, I have traveled to another place. So, so you find some background voice. I'll make sure that there is no background voice from tomorrow onwards. If no other questions, then we can wind up this session and we'll continue the class for the session tomorrow. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. We'll meet again in tomorrow's session.